Please pause the video and take a moment to read this important safety message. Welcome back, everybody. Part 3 here in this McIntosh C8 series of restoration. This one will be a fun one because we finish up the components and then we actually get to connecting all these pieces together and playing them. So anyway, as I mentioned in video 2 turned out to be real long, so I cut this in half. So the startup of this is a little abrupt, but just follow along with it and hopefully you'll have some fun. I know I had a lot of fun making this video. All right, on to it. At any rate, now we're going to flip it over and get busy. We've got 2 more hiding here on the other side. And as I went through and checked the resistors earlier, I did find a 330 ohm K ohm resistor right here that was really out of spec. So I've replaced it now, and I'm going to start here on these. Alright, we've got those soldered in. This unit is done now at this point. Going to set it aside. Let me see what time. I started this morning. Hang on. I started this morning at 6:23 a.m. and it is now 12:19. So 6 hours into doing that restoration. And I really did not do anything else other than go up and fix a bowl of cereal at some point in time. So just give you a relevance of how many hours you're likely to put into something like this. About looks like 6 hours, and I haven't done the power cord, haven't done any testing, haven't cleaned any pots, haven't put tubes back in, testing them, so on and so forth. You get it. I'll have 8 or 10 hours in each of these units. It's pretty much a full day. As you can see, I'm diving into the second unit now. I'm not going to walk you guys through it, but we'll show you when we get done here and plug them both up and whatnot. But stay tuned. So I was working my way through the second unit here, and I got a few. I started on the bad end. I decided I was going to be a glutton for punishment first and then make my way to the easy end. At any rate, I got to about the 4th capacitor here, and it looked perfectly fine. It looked just like one of these sitting in here. And then I grabbed one lead in down here after I unsoldered it on the other side and started to pick it up, and there was very little pressure applied. And this is what happened. This capacitor just came all to pieces. Let's see if I can find it. This lead in that I had grabbed a hold of just came straight apart. And you can see here where this capacitor on the end here had a major meltdown on the inside of it. So while this capacitor looked perfectly fine, unlike this one right here that has already got a big chunk missing out of the side of it, this one had gone bad and you just couldn't physically see it. So physically viewing something doesn't always indicate you've got a problem, and these things are just notorious for over time breaking down. Thus why you can see on the inside here the mylar that's wrapped these things is just old and brittle, not what they once were when they were manufactured. And yet again, I went to remove another capacitor here, and I promise you, all I did on this one was snip the end right here. As soon as I snipped the end from the other side and pulled it out through here, this capacitor came apart. And before that, it looked perfectly fine and intact. So just a lesson to be learned. These old bumblebees, it's not a matter of if they will fail you, it's a matter of when. Okay, I thought I'd talk just a moment about getting components out of these boards. There's a couple different tactics that I use here, and it varies a little bit per situation, but when I can, I like to flip over to the other side here. Okay, where possible, I will come on the other side here and use a soldering iron and get it nice and warm, and I will unwrap the original. It's not always that easy. I'll give you some examples here. Some of these here in the middle, just where you got one coming through a middle hole, or even some of these on the end have 4 and 5 wires wrapped around them, and it just becomes cumbersome. So in those scenarios, I will try to use a set of angled pliers. You can see the little, well, maybe not. You can see the little angled clipper here. And and I will come in here as close as I can, kind of underneath, and I will snip these off right down here at the end, which will then enable me to, like I did here, pull the other side of the wire out. Then you should still have a through hole. Sometimes even that's not so easy, because what will have happened, a good example might be this one right here. They had not only wrapped it around and soldered it onto the tab here, but they had also soldered it into the hole. So even snipping it off, trying to get it back out the other side, so then you end up sitting here with a soldering iron on one side trying to pull the component out the other side. And that works sometimes. It's a combination of things I go through. It's not the same each and every one of them. But through the couple different things I just showed you, you should be able to kind of figure your way through these. For example, I'm on my very last one down here. If you'll notice on the other side here, relative to it, I have two component leads going down into this hole. Well, if I can flip this back over, you can see here there's not a lot of solder, and these two wires here, let me get these out of the way from the previous one I did. I can actually reach down in here like this, and I can snip both of those off. And as you see on the other side, let me zoom back out a little bit, you can see this component came out, and now I'm able to lift that side up, and I've got the hole now to go down through and work. That works a lot of the times. Like I said, when they're all soldered up, sometimes I end up having to use a soldering iron along with that technique, but combination of those techniques will get you going. I was actually so interested in this topic of the best approach for this that I sent Terry DeWick an email, and haven't got a response back. It's been a few days, but hopefully he'll get around to it. He's the resident McIntosh pro. I just thought it may be interesting to hear from him what his approach was. I kind of outlined all that in an email and sent it off. We'll see if we get a response. All right, I also thought I would show you, once you get the wires through the other side, I typically like to take them and then wrap them around kind of the way they were originally, and tuck them down best you can, and then I will kind of come along, and I love to solder them here on the back where I've wrapped them around, and let that flow in really well, and kind of let all that flow downward. And you'll see it flows all the way down around and kind of goes in then, and you can kind of hit it here on the side a little bit too if you want, and then it's just a matter of simply coming along and snipping off the old wires here. Same thing here, I'll take this one around and kind of wrap it around the same way and solder it as well here from the back side like this, and we are good there. And then similarly, I can just come along and snip that off. There you go. And lastly here, I would just encourage you to go back and look at every single connection all the way through here and make sure that you don't have one that you left unsoldered. It is easy to do, because what happens is, it's not like the components on the other side go from here to here and you do this one and then you move to the second one and the third one. It's not like that at all. When you get into these, you'll notice that this one connects to here, but then the one from here connects to here, and then the one from here connects not only to there but to there as well, and then this one connects from here to here and here to here. So you end up having to undo 4 or 5 at a time sometimes to actually achieve what you're wanting to do, because you want to feed them back 2 at a time into these holes. And you can see that on the other side here as you kind of look like these here. There's 2 in a hole here, there's 2 in a hole here, there's 2 in a hole here. And so it's really easy then as you go back, as you're coming through and you've got 4 or 5 of them unwound here, and you're starting to solder back to overlook that. So I would just double check all your work, look for any cracked resistors. I've already tested all these resistors with the tubes out. Some of them you'll find are in parallel with other resistors, and you just kind of have to, what I like to do then, if you've got a stereo pair, You can compare one to the other, and if they're fairly in spec between the two, likely good to go. Other times you might want to lift the ends of the resistors up and test them. As you can see here, I did find some resistors out of spec that I've had to replace, but for the most part these were fairly solid, and that's good, because a lot of people would say these resistors are part of what gives these units their sound. A lot of people would say the same statement about these bumblebee capacitors. It is a true statement. Just the fact that your unit's going to fail you at some point, if not very soon. So you're much better off recapping, going with something you believe is going to give a good quality sound to the unit and will let it last for years and years and years. Alright, we're going to move on to a few more things here. Up next, I'm just using a little deoxit on all the switches, putting this stuff on fairly gently as I do it, because it's easy to get a lot. It's easy to get a lot going here, and then I'll just work each switch, 30-40 times here to help clean things up. Stuff leaks through easily, so constantly wiping it up, but kind of work that. I'm also going to do all these pots on the back here, you can see, all the way across, and I will get all these pots here on the front as well, and we'll do the same thing with those. We'll just work them back and forth until they're all good and clean. Alright, don't forget you've got all these switches here. I like to spray them from the back as well in here, and then work each of those as well, so don't forget those when you're cleaning. Okay, we're on the home stretch here. All we've got left is to replace the power cord, and if you'll notice here, I'll zoom in for you, but right here it's just soldered on in two places, comes out, goes through this rubber grommet and out. So it's super simple replacement. It's wired internally to the white switch via another set of wires, so there's no daisy chaining of this, so we'll replace this. But believe it or not, this is what I've been waiting on to finish this project, and the longest lead time item I had. So here's what happened. When I first put everything together, I knew I needed two black power cords, and I wanted two with the ribs here in the middle, right? To match up with what the factory would look like, and I wanted to keep it as original as I could. So I didn't have any. All I had was some brown ones. So I ordered two black ones off of eBay. I actually ordered 10 black ones. Well, the guy shipped them to me, and they weren't ribbed. They were flat, and they looked like PlayStation power cords. And I said, well, that doesn't match the picture in your auction. And he says, no one's ever complained. And I said, well, I am. So I sent them back. And then I proceeded to find some, and I had a hard time. I ended up finding these on Amazon, because I would have just went to my local hardware store, but since we're under quarantine, I'm trying to be socially distant. At any rate, I ordered these on Amazon. I thought, good. It was in a 2-pack. I ordered them. And then I got the email saying, well, they'll be shipped in 3.5 weeks from now. And I realized this is a non-essential item according to Amazon. So anyway, go figure. I've been waiting all along on these cords. So we're going to get these removed. You've probably seen me use these in a video before. They're from a company called Hayco. These are number 29. They're a little bit expensive, a little bit hard to find, but they are specifically made for this purpose. If you don't have that, get a set of just plain old pliers like this. Put them in the outer notch so that the gap's as wide as can be, and you can get in here and squeeze this in. This just makes it easier because it squeezes from the side like this on an angle, and you can keep the cords not in the way. All right, we just pulled this out, and I just want to show you how brittle these are. I don't know if you can see them crackling, but they're just, the whole power cords were like that. As you tried to bend them at all, they just fell all to pieces here, and time for some new ones. Okay, when you go to put the new one in, just snap this into the grommet. Make sure you leave yourself enough room here on the inside to turn this and solder it where it needs to be. You can always cut this off, but once you snap it in there, you can't make it any longer without going to the extent of pulling this back out. So I would err on the side of being just a little too long instead of being just a little too short, and I may adjust it a little more and play by those rules myself. And then you just basically kind of snap your your little retaining thing back down in, and sometimes they're a little bit tough. You got to push on them a little bit, but ultimately then you can get them and lock them back down with this tool, which is made specifically for these, and then you can slide this in here and start squeezing and push, and I probably need both hands, so I'm going to do it off camera. As you can see, it went in good and tight and snug now, and I've got enough on the other side to bend around and solder where it needs to go. And by the way, this just connects here on the top lug here, and then there's another lug down in here a little bit harder to see that it connects to. Just remember where you did it when you take the other one off. And as you can see here, it's a lot easier to flip the unit over on the other side and get down in here to solder this one onto the other lug I was mentioning. Once I get that soldered in, then I can go flip it over and hit the other side. Alright, up next, the two power cords coming from the power amplifiers. You know, I've installed these new cords, but they have a you know, a wide lug here to indicate the neutral and hot lines, and because of the way we're going to be interconnecting these and wiring these up to the preamps, as you can see here, I've just used a Dremel type tool, and what I've done is ground the end down here on both sides, and I'm going to do this one the same so that we are the same way we were in 1962. The reason you're going to need to do that is if you're going to operate this the way it was designed, you're going to end up plugging these into the switched outputs here on this. So you then will have one power control here. One volume knob on and off turns the entire system on and off from one location. I know some of you guys will say, wow, you should leave that intact, you know, it's all about safety and this and that. And if I wanted to go to that level, I would have removed the 2-prong cords and put 3-prong cords in all of this stuff. Just trying to keep these as original as possible, and as long as they're operated properly, you know, they're fairly safe. Okay, these are the installation instructions for the C8, and they're easily found online. But they're a little bit convoluted because while it talks about how to directly connect these, it interweaves other things about these amplifiers. So I thought I would highlight the sections of importance. First off, it says the heavy interconnect cable connecting the C8 to the power amplifier is disconnected at the amplifier end. So as you might be able to see here, this is the C8 unit, and I still have the heavy-duty power cord connected here, and I have disconnected it on the other end, as it says, from the power amplifier. Okay, with a pair of cutting pliers, okay, remove pin number 2 from the octal plug of the internet connect cable. And I don't know if you can see this easily right here, but this pin right here, which is pin number 2, this would be pin number 1. There's the key, pin number 1, pin number 2. It has been cut off some a long time ago right here, okay? So someone had already been running these amps this way, okay? So it then says, after removing pin 2, the interconnect cable is recommended to connect to the power amplifier. It doesn't exactly tell you which one, but it is the left amplifier. And on the amplifier on the side there will be an octal socket here, and it says preamplifier input. And so I'm going to plug this cable into the preamplifier input. This gets into some stuff here about how you can do this without using it for tape heads instead of phono and whatnot. Doesn't apply to what we're doing. Next, plug one end of the 3-foot shielded lead into the jack mark main output located on the back of the C8. Okay, on the C8 here, on the back, you've got a whole pile of outputs, but there's one up here that will say main output, and this is the one we're talking about. And when it says 3-foot shielded cable, it's just talking about a 3-foot shielded RCA cable. So I'm going to go grab one of those and plug it in. It's simply a RCA cable that has 2 ends to it. It's just a single cable. Mine might be slightly more than 3 feet, but it won't matter. It's just a single cable though versus a pair of stereo cables. Okay, up next it will tell you to we plugged it into the main out on the C8, Now it says plug the heavy interconnect cable from the C8S in the octal socket marked preamp onto the right power amplifier. Okay, so what it's basically saying now is connect the C8S to the right amplifier using these heavy-duty cords. And if you don't have these cables, your best chance is to find a set on eBay, or you could make a set, but they are shielded, so and they do carry power, so you would need to build them appropriately. But on this set, there are no pins cut. All pins are here. As you can see now, coming out of this unit on the C8S, feeding over into the right amplifier. Sorry I didn't have my light on here earlier. Okay, up next, the loose end of the 3-inch shielded cable, section B, from the C8 main output is plugged into the left stereo in on the C8S. So we're going to take this cable now that we plugged into the main out on the C8, and on the C8S here, we are going to plug it into the left stereo input right here. Okay. Then what we've got here is interconnect by means of one of the 6-foot shielded cables. So for your 6-foot shielded cable, you are going to want a pair of stereo RCA jacks like this. Says between the jack marked left stereo out on the C8S, so I'm going to use the white one here for left, and I'm going to go here to the left stereo output. Okay, and then I'm going to feed from there, and it says then to plug that into the 0.5 volt input, in other words the RCA input jack on the left amplifier here. Okay, then we're going to interconnect by means of the other 6-foot shielded cable between the main output on the C8S. So you'll come over here now to the output right here labeled main output, which really becomes your right output, and then you're going to feed from that into the right RCA input on the back of your McIntosh amp over here. Now it says plug the AC cord from the C8 into one of the auxiliary receptacles on the C8S. Okay, and if you'll notice here, coming out of the C8, I've got the same scenario. I'm going to need to grind off one of these lugs right here. Okay, as you can see here, we've got it plugged into one of the switched outlets on the back of the C8S. Now it says the AC cords from both power amplifiers can be plugged into the auxiliary AC plugs on their respective preamplifiers. So you're going to plug the right amplifier into here and the left amplifier over into this other one. Now the on-off switch of the volume control of the C8S is now turning on the entire system. And as you can see now, quite a few connections here on one side of this, and similarly over here. But now these units are kind of set up appropriately so that you know, the power unit here, the C8S, is the master. It controls the power, the volume, the balance, everything for the entire setup, and that is the purpose of the C8S unit. Okay, we finally got both the preamps wired up the way the instructions say, and the two amplifiers set up. I will tell you, I did this yesterday, brought them up on the Variac, and no smoke, no problems there. Had an audio problem on one of the channels, and I ended up going back into the C8 over here unit and went back through it multiple times. Finally ended up tracing signal and found that I was losing signal as it was going through one of the volume knobs. What I had was a wire that had came loose, maybe originally at some point soldered by the McIntosh factory or whoever, but I guess in me working inside the amp, that wire had came loose on the other end. So it took me a little while to find it, because originally, you know, I looked for everything that I had touched to see if all my solder joints were correct and all my wires were in the right place. And this This turned out to not be a place I had touched, but nonetheless, got that resoldered, got audio flowing through the amp well, and just brought it back up again on the Variac here. Everything seems to be going okay. I've had it sitting now for about an hour or so, just letting it warm up. I like to do that just to see if you have any pops, cracks, whistling sounds. You never know what creeps up in the quietness of no audio. But these amps are fairly quiet for a for an all tube setup here with 4 pieces of tube gear. About as quiet as any tube gear setup I've ever found. As you guys know, tube gear is never going to be quiet as deadly quiet as solid state can be, but as soon as you start the music playing, it typically overcomes this because it's at really low volume. But thought I'd hit the play button, let you guys hear a song from a local band here in Winston-Salem, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Count the bodies anymore. The blood and whiskey dance like lovers on the barroom floor. These eyes are sore, these boots are worn. They cannot tell the story anymore. The roads I've traveled far and wide, they speak to me just like the tears of a widowed bride. These guns are lies, the hate has died and never filled the emptiness inside. For all the wicked things I've done, I'm hanging up my guns. I can't defend what I've become. I'm hanging up my guns. I've only known life on the run. I'm hanging up my gun. And all this guilt, it weighs a ton. I'm hanging up my guns.
Alright, I'll see if I can find their Bandcamp link or something and drop them in the background for you, or in the comments down below if anybody's interested. But I'm extremely happy with how these amplifiers have turned out. Really quiet, work well. You know, probably the few downsides for the owner of these amps. One, when he sent me these, he had polished the brass faceplates up beautifully, and I've only had to touch them about 10,000 times while twisting and turning them to solder, so he's probably going to have to repolish the brass faceplates on them. Two, you know, the umbilical cords between all of this is quite a bit, but if you had them in some kind of console or on a shelf and you turn the amps around the other way so all these cables were kind of hanging off the back, it would turn out, you know, quite nice. I just happen to have it all turned out towards me here. But anyway, hope everybody enjoyed this video series. I know I had a lot of fun with it. It's not often you get to work on this kind of stuff. It's just it's iconic, it's historic, and it's kind of what this whole hobby is made about. So thought I'd show you one last little tip before I wrapped up this video. You can see these little connectors here. They're banana jack to spade lug connectors. You can pick these up off of eBay. If you just search for banana spade, you'll find these. And you got to make sure you tighten these little screw lugs down really good. Sometimes I'll put a drop of Loctite in there to hold them really tight. But at that point you can just go banana plugs off of your McIntosh gear here into banana plugs on the back of your speakers, and it works out quite well. Alright, in reviewing my video, after I completed it, this kept bugging me, the fact that I didn't throw any type of heat shrink on this one. I did on the other amp, and it's good and solid because that's a heavy wire here on that. I mean, it's not moving, but it's a little bit exposed there. So I'm going to unsolder that and throw some heat shrink on it real quick. It's the little things that matter. I just saw that when I was reviewing the video, and it just kept bugging me and stuck out at me like an eyesore. So anyway, we fixed that. Thanks for watching, everybody. Had a lot of fun with this series, and gonna have even more fun listening to these. I'm gonna keep these on the bench for about a week or so and listen to them intensely, because the last thing I like to do is finish something like this and kick it off the bench and then move on to the next item, and then the customer have a problem. So I'll usually put them over on my listening bench and give them a good listen off and on for a week or so. All right, thanks everybody, and we'll be back soon.